Ahoy, Nakama, and welcome aboard, or walk the plank. We're your co-captains, Adam and Ed, and this is the Void Century Podcast. Your weekly deep dive into One Piece lore, lost treasures, and the wildest fan theories from the Grand Line to the Void Century. From ancient secrets to Yonko chaos and fresh chapter breakdowns, if you're chasing Laugh Tale, you're in the right crew. Yarg! Hit subscribe and let's set sail. Hello, and welcome back to the Void Century Podcast, here today to bring you episode 41, chapter 1160 of One Piece, entitled The God Valley Incident. We're finally here. So the cover page actually, we don't care about the cover page, but Yamato is at the Holy Inari Shrine. There is a memorial for Odin and the Nine Scabbards overlooking the flower capital, but let's get started with the chapter.
All right, so let me begin. We are back at that podium with the MC talking about all the different prizes, and he's presenting to them the Davy clan. So these new special rabbits that they're trying to hunt. And the crowd is just cheering and also just jeering, actually. They're booing and they're throwing stuff on the stage. And the celestial dragons, we see them in their space suits, and they have these different pattern linings on their backs. So it looks like maybe those patterns might signify their different houses. For instance, one of them just looks like circle instead of circle, which kind of resembles Emu's eyes. So maybe that's like the Nerona family's crest or something that they're using as a liner. So I thought that was kind of interesting. But yeah, so they're saying how the Davy Jones ancestors were just hated, and they're even comparing them to Buccaneers. You're just more Buccaneers, aren't you? Is what they're saying. And I mean, if we think about it, Blackbeard is roughly Kuma's size. He has kind of similar hair. It's curly. So yeah, I think that it's plausible that Blackbeard might be a Buccaneer. And also maybe the original Davy D. Jones was also a Buccaneer. And yeah, I just think that's a potential, maybe all people of the Davy clan are Buccaneers, but not all Buccaneers are part of the Davy clan, something like that. What do you think?
I think it's very, very interesting, and it's possible. I think Davy D. Jones could have been a Buccaneer himself, and the Davy clan is probably descendants of Jones himself. But in moving forward, we actually get to see a panel of what I can only assume to be the rest of the Davy clan as the MC tells the Celestial Dragons to stop throwing things around. Actually, we do get the first shot of Teach's mom, right? She's in chains. She has her hands over little Teach's eyes, and it pulls on your heartstrings. He just looks so shocked. And then we actually get a panel of his view, and he's overlooking the Celestial Dragons, and they're all in silhouettes, looking like monsters. And again, the MC tells everybody to just cool down, and reminds them that they will be penalized if somebody dies prematurely. Just to remind everybody, in the Kuma flashback, we saw that actually Garling, who wins this tournament, was penalized because he killed the king before proceedings even started. So at this point in time, the king is probably already dead. Perhaps Garling was too disgusted with the king and his bloodline before he actually started the game. So we can only assume that perhaps the king was a Buccaneer of some sort, and Garling could just not let him survive under any circumstances. So what do you think, Ed?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that Teach's mother has light-colored hair, so possibly blonde or some other light-colored hair. And Teach has black hair, and Rox has kind of black streaks in his hair. So it's just kind of interesting how Teach has fully black hair. I just thought that was interesting. I don't think there's anything necessarily significant about that, but just kind of something worth to note.
It is pretty interesting. Teach's design is very dark. He is darkness embodied, right? But at the same time, the dark and light hair that both his parents have could also point to the duality that he has really inside him, right? Because we know Teach, he's got the bumbling guy who, likes to fall around and eat pie and argue with Luffy with pie in his mouth. And we also have the absolute sadistic Blackbeard that will go ahead and take care of Law and just crush his ship, right? So very interesting dichotomy between the character. But moving forward, we actually see Saturn is on God Valley, and he's sitting there and he's having a moment with Figurlin, and he's like, "Hey, Figurlin, good job, yeah." And Garling is like, "Oh yeah, well this was just an act of fate," and they made sure to embolden that word fate. So I just wanted to linger on that for a second. It's very interesting trying to just speculate on the fact that God Valley is an event that is so pivotal to the story of One Piece. Some would actually argue that this event right here really catalyzes the story before One Piece and really leads to all the events that we see with Luffy and the Straw Hats. But we do get to see the MC again, and he says, now we're introducing the favorites to win the individual competition. And we get like a jump cut, and we see a woman saying, I'll be dead soon. Take my boys to somebody who's nice and kind hearted to turn them into men. Don't let him have them. So we actually see a panel of Dragon consoling Shanks's mother before she passes, and he's like, okay, I'll take your kids. And we see her, unfortunately, we see the life slip away from her as we see a panel, and we see Dragon running away, and he's like, I don't know who you are. I don't know what's going on. I want to save your kids. If I don't, I can't live with myself. I'm just going to collapse under the weight of it all. So it's kind of heartbreaking. We get a jump cut, just the dichotomy of it. We get a jump cut back to the stage, and we see the MC, and he's classifying all the different targets or rabbits on the island, saying there are 13 super rare rabbits. They're worth 10,000 points, and it's sick. It's a reminder that these points are tied to people with actual lives, right?
Yeah.
So we actually see Kuma's face, and while they're discussing all the other rare rabbits on the island.
Yeah, so the hunt begins, and we learn that there's about an hour for the different rabbits to run and hide effectively. And so they're all fleeing, and one of the people, they're like, we just have to survive for 3 weeks and we'll be free. Like we got this. And like obviously he's very afraid, and he's just trying to kind of like, build up their hope just a little bit, as slim as it is. And yeah, so we also noticed that the rabbits still have shackles in their arms, all of them, like even the children, but their feet are free, so it allows them to run. But like, even if they come face to face with a celestial dragon, they won't really be able to fight back. Potentially, they could even be sea stone cuffs just in case one of the rabbits is a devil fruit user. So maybe they are sea stone cuffs even. I'm not sure. Probably not, just because of how few devil fruits we see in One Piece, but who knows? Like they might just be like extra precautious just in case. So then we see a a family, and they're hiding, and they're holding a baby, and they're just like, and the baby, they're just hoping that the baby doesn't cry, and I guess it makes some noise, and a celestial dragon finds them, and they're like, please, like, don't, you can have us but not our baby. And it's like two parents and a baby, and then we hear like three gunshots, and the celestial dragon's laughing, and it's all being recorded by the Denden Mushi. So I guess that's kind of like how they're tracking the points the different houses and families are getting. You got anything to add, Adam?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on the face of that Denden Mushi. That poor guy has seen some stuff.
Yeah, yeah. It looks kind of like, I don't know. It looks, is it sweating, or is it just kind of like unamused? I don't know.
It almost looks kind of sullen to me. Like
Sure,
he's
sure.
he's sad. He's seen some stuff.
Yeah. And then, yeah, and then we just kind of see more families getting slain by the celestial dragons, and they're all crying, and it's honestly really like tragic and sad. But then we cut to Marie-Joie, and I guess those Denden Mushis are broadcasting live on screen. So like there's a bunch of large screens, and like the center of Marie-Joie, that a bunch of celestial dragons are gathered around watching, kind of like a soccer tournament or something like that. And so yeah, there's a bunch of screens just recording all the different areas, and they announced that the Figurlin family is currently in the lead, but the Bavette and Meyer families are really close behind. So Bavette is actually a new house that we haven't heard of before. So this is a newly announced in the series Celestial Dragon House. If they're close to the Figureland family, my guess is that they're probably at least one of them is a member of the Gods Knights, most likely. And if you like look into what a bavette is, it's the name for a cut of beef on the belly. It is also a type of ribbon pasta. So yeah, I don't know. It could be some sort of cut that is named after, which kind of goes along with like what these celestial dragons are doing. They're kind of like cutting down these innocent people and rabbits. So yeah.
We see a jump cut of two celestial dragon women just fawning over Garling, so we can only assume that Garling has his own groupies. And we can see that people are betting on different houses. They're talking about, again, the Manmayer and the Bavette families, also the Figurelands and the Shepherds. And it was mentioned previously in a chapter, but here it's confirmed that there are multiple competitions going on at the same time. Not only is there a winner for an individual competition, again, which is Figureland, there is also a clan competition as well, in which we were alluded to when the man mayor, the person with the hidden face and the gun, said, "Oh, Gunko, with you on our side, of course we'll be able to win this." And in speaking of Gunko, actually, we get a introduction panel of Gunko in which we see her unfortunately riding on a gigantic arrow and impaling people with arrows. However, Gunko looks great. She's got the whole MCR Black Parade thing going on.
Yeah.
She is looking like she's a member of the procession. We see her with a saber. I think this is the first time we actually see her using a sword proper. And she is also introduced with her epithet, which is the devoted blade of God, which is just leading more into that thought that she is probably a retainer of Emu in some way. However, it is also interesting that the introduction box also makes it a point to tell you what family she is from. So again, Gunko Manmayer is part of the Manmayer family. And then we see the rest of the celestial dragons say they're pouting kind of. They're like, "Oh man, I'm so jealous of Garling. He's gonna win this and he's gonna take this beautiful lady to be his wife. Oh man." So we see Shaki there. She's sitting there looking kind of somber and just doting on what her fate could be.
Okay, yeah. So next, I just want to kind of talk about where Emu is in all of this. So is Emu still in Mary Joie? We haven't really seen Emu ever outside of the flower room in Mary Joie, I don't believe. So yeah, I think that, or maybe he was in the throne room as well. Is the throne room in the flower room? Or they're separate rooms, right, Adam?
They're separate rooms, yes.
Yeah, we've seen him in two separate rooms, but I he mostly stays in the flower room. So I don't know, like what makes him want to stay in the flower room, like other than it being the room of Nefertari Lily. What do you think, Adam?
I think that the room is perhaps one of the only places in which Ian can find solace, because I think Eames kind of a target in the outside world, doesn't really get outside too much, and we see the flower room really is like it's a representation of like the outside, and really allows Eam to enjoy something within the like something that would be traditionally enjoyed outside, but within the confines of marriage. While I get like Emu has to like stay hidden, but also I also get like sickly kid vibes behind Emu, right? Like his parents never let him go outside.
Sure. And also, I mean, Murray's Wall is probably the most protected area and safest place to be in all of the One Piece universe. So that's probably another reason to stay there. But yeah, maybe Emu actually, and this is just kind of, this is like a deep cook, so take it with a grain of salt. But maybe Emu has some sort of curse that prevents him from leaving Marie-Joie or being too far away from the flower room specifically. Like maybe the flower room has some sort of, anti-aging properties for Emu. And speaking of curses, we know that Oda has like during an SBS like talked about Davy D. Jones and that he was a cursed individual or cursed to live on the ocean floor. And honestly, I think that Emu is kind of like the sea god and representation of the sea god, just like how Luffy is the representation of the sun god, and they're kind of like, duking it out. So maybe the original Davy D. Jones was cursed to live on the ocean floor. He had a devil fruit that made him, stay in the ocean floor. And yeah, what do you think, Adam?
I just wanted to remind everybody too that we also know the story of Vanderdecken as well, who threw his crew overboard one night and was also cursed by a god to live on the seafloor. So it seems that there's been a lot of curses floating around in the One Piece story lately. Also, just to remind everybody, the deep lore behind the devil fruits as well is if you eat a devil fruit, you anger the sea god, which could be seen as a curse, and therefore you cannot swim.
That's true.
You
Yeah,
become
that's
an
true.
anchor in the water.
And with Vanderdecken, he was able to survive on the seafloor because he is a fisherman. So he's got gills, he's able to breathe and all of that. But Davy D. Jones, because we already know that Rox is a Davy and Davy D. Jones is Rox's ancestor. We know that he's a human. Yeah, what do you got, Adam?
We've also seen the feat previously with Jack, right? Jack, he had a devil fruit, right? He was, if I remember correctly, he was part fishman. So he had a devil fruit, was part fishman, but he was basically stuck to the seafloor for a couple days before the beast pirates could retrieve him. So we have already seen this in the story before,
Yeah,
but it hasn't been a curse proper.
yeah. So we've seen it a couple of times with the fishmen, but with someone like Davy, what would allow him to survive undersea? Like, let's just assume he has some sort of devil fruit and he's unable to leave the sea floor. What kind of, what would allow him to survive under the sea? So this got my brain spinning. And so I'm just kind of like throwing this one out there into the internet. But like maybe he ate the sea god devil fruit. And maybe Davy D. Jones, living on the ocean floor, kind of his personality changed and he became, he's living with his thoughts and he kind of started to flip his personality. So he went from being like a D into someone who is like an anti D and wants to stop and, dismantle the D and everything that they represent because he let's just throw it out there. Maybe he became emu. What do you think, Adam?
I don't know. I don't know if I co-sign that, but
Yeah,
I just wanted to remind you and our listeners that we have seen an SBS in which Oda did draw like a representation of Davy D. Jones, and he was like an old man holding a treasure chest. I think that might have been a big brain move by Oda to show us Davy D. Jones. However, we didn't realize he would become important to the series. I think we're probably going to have a flashback with a young Davy D. Jones in the future. Well, not future as in like present story, but future as in future chapters we're going to see a flashback in which we see a younger Davy D. Jones.
sure.
Moving forward, we actually see Summers actually sadistically trying to kick a small child out of a tree like a coconut, and it's just not good enough that he would make this poor child fall out of a tree. He's like, "Oh, I set some thorns up at the bottom of the tree to break your fall. Perfect cushion." And we see this poor little kid's just crying, and yeah, Summers just gave him a nice little nest to drop into. And we see a man run over and say, "Hey, please don't stop. What are you doing? That's my kid," as this kid is falling. And the father races over to save his son. And Summers is like, "Oh, wow, Timber, what a touching display. Oh, it's a shame that both of you are going to have to go." But I guess he enjoys the 2-for-1 every now and then, as sickening as it is. So we get another jump cut over to Dragon, seeing the aftermath, and he's just looking at all these people that have just been brutalized, really is the best word for it. And he's thinking to himself, and he's like, well, if I defy the celestial dragons and I try to save anybody here, my everybody I know in the Marines is going to be beheaded. We're all going to pay the price. And we actually get a funny jump cut, and I guess his superior officers are like, "Oh, is everyone here yet? Oh, except for that dragon guy. Where's that dragon guy? I hope he didn't get involved in anything on the island." So it's just pretty funny.
Well, yeah, the
And
guy's actually covering for Dragon, saying like he has a thought bubble saying like where's Dragon gone, but he's saying, "Of course, sir, everyone's here." So he's actually covering and saying that Dragon actually is on the ship.
oh, well, I'm pretty sure that's going to be the dumbest mistake he's ever going to make. But good for Dragon for at least following his ideals and retaining his morals in such trying times. So we see a celestial dragon, and sorry, Dragon himself is watching a celestial dragon sneaking up on Kuma, Ivankov, Ginny, and the rest of the children's slaves. And the celestial dragon is like, "Oh, I finally found him," and is just drooling with anticipation at finding a buccaneer. And we see Ivankov is on a rock, like preaching the sermon, and Ivankov is trying to rally everybody and is like, "Don't waste your time. We're gonna escape. We gotta do our best. Don't dream of salvation. We're escaping the game itself. We're getting off God Valley." And Dragon's like, "Oh, well, it's great to see like some of these slaves still have resolve. Like some of these captives are gonna, they have a fighting spirit." So the celestial dragon, he points his gun at Kuma and he said, "Get a taste of my killer 10-shot rifle." And we see him take a shot. But before, I'm going to cut the suspense by just pointing out something that I thought was very interesting. So the rifle itself is referred to as a killer 10-shot rifle. We know Oda is a huge fan of numbers and number puns, and you can't ever just take a number at face value in One Piece, as we've talked about the number 56 and some other things. So he refers to his rifle as a killer 10-shot rifle. We know that the number 10 refers to the ancient kingdom. If you refer to Joy Boy's shield, you see one large dot surrounded by 9 smaller dots. So 10 in total. So perhaps we've also speculated that there's potentially 9 or 10 families of the D, which we can go ahead and explain a little bit later. Luffy also stated he wanted 10 crew members for his ship and his pirate crew. At least 10, I think was the exact verbiage. So I just think it's very interesting that the rifle was referred to as a killer 10-shot rifle, as one that kills 10, as one that it would be used to defeat the enemies of the gods or the affiliates of the ancient kingdom.
Yeah, yeah. So we actually cut next to Dragon, and it turns out he was the one who shot his pistol, slaying the celestial dragon and saving Kuma. And it's interesting to note that, like, during this time, Ivankov was, trying to rally the people, so Ginny and Kuma and others, to say, just being very inspirational. And you can just see the future revolutionary in Ivankov. Like, honestly, Ivankov, might have even inspired Dragon here too with what he was saying. So I think that that was really cool. But yeah, so more people are getting slayed in the meantime by the celestial dragons, and then we learn that the Rocks pirates arrive at God Valley. And if we look at the design of the ship, it's pretty interesting that there's a full dead skeleton strapped to the figurehead. It still has clothes on. And it also looks like the ship is like reinforced, maybe for ramming or something like that, or to prevent ramming, but more so for ramming. And we have seen them ram ships in the past, so it's a good strategy to have. So I could totally see someone like Rox being super aggressive and just ramming into another ship and then boarding them right away and, doing what pirates do best. So yeah, Rox is saying that there's no point, or he's talking to his crew and he's saying that there's no point to like fight amongst each other. Like, let's let's do a temporary team up. And there's so much treasure. There's Shaki. There's devil fruits. Like, there's a lot on the line. So let's have a truce. And what they can do is just bring the treasure back, and they'll just divvy it up fairly. So let's actually work cohesively as a team, please. So we know that Rox doesn't have like the firmest grasp over his crew. They are trying to underhand each other and get bigger cuts of the treasure or whatnot. And then they just start kind of bickering about like they can't split Shaki, and Shiki's like she's gonna fall in love with the one who saves her first. And then Silver Axe is like, well, I'll save her first. And Captain John's like, no, 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 you fools. Whoever has the most treasure is the one she's going to fall for. And and Whitebeard, being the noble man he is, he's just like, you know what? I just care for her as a friend. And like, if she happens to fall in love, I'm okay with that. And of course, Bucky is not happy, and she's like, she's just upset that her love is, not being returned to her by Whitebeard. And Gloriosa's contemplating like, if I save Shaki, maybe that'll make Roger like me more. And Streusen, he comments on Wang Ji being left behind on the island, so that's Ochoku. So we'll just ban him from Shaki's bar whenever they save her. And funny enough, Big Ma, she says that the entire world could turn upside down and Shaki would still not have any interest in y'all.
I just want to say I think it's very interesting that Ochoku stayed back on Pirate Island. I think it's pretty much confirmed at this point right now he is the traitor. And I think afterwards, the Rock's crew, when they do return to Hachinosu, they'll realize that even more stuff was stolen once he's gone.
Yeah, Ochoku probably is looting and then running before they come back. And then finally, we get a panel of Kaido, and all he cares about right now is the devil fruits. So he's like, Linlin, you promised me a devil fruit, right? You're going to get me a devil fruit, right? So yeah, next we see like the Rocks pirates, firing their cannons from the sea to the shore, and then eventually they don't even like go to a dock. They just go on the shore with their ship because it's more heavily fortified. I think that it can handle just going on the land. So yeah, the celestial dragons are kind of freaking out, saying that the pirates have landed. Like, what's the Navy doing? Like, we need your help. If a single hair on their head is touched, then they're gonna die. And then there's like a urgent report for the Marines that they need more help on the western coast because that's where Roger landed. And yeah, the Roger pirates also landed. And we also see Dragon, Monkey D Dragon, and he's carrying the two twins. So this is the first time we see him with the twin babies. And he just kind of mentions that they're staying quiet and he thinks that's miraculous.
I think it's very interesting. We get a close up of Shamrock and Shanks, and they look so cute, even though they are like concerned and fighting for life and death at this point. But I think it's very interesting that in getting a close up of the babies, we actually see them like in their little onesies. And I just thought it was really interesting that we know Shanks is saved in that onesie that has the moon, the stars, and the sun on it, and yet here he's got like a different outfit on. I just think it's really funny that they would change outfits because I don't expect Dragon of all things to be changing diapers in the middle of combat. But I'm sure we've seen stranger feats in the One Piece world. I'm sure. Oh my God, Mr. Pink would be proud at this point, right?
Yeah.
So I also thought it was interesting, right? So we know that Shanks, he gets off the island, he gets raised by Roger, and Shamrock stays to be raised by Figureland. So I just think it's really interesting. Do you think that Shanks and Shamrock know the story about Dragon at this point? Do you think they know that Dragon saved them? And to that point, like, how does Shamrock feel about Dragon? I mean, he works for the world government and Eam especially, so Dragon is like enemy number one. And furthermore, like, how does he feel about his dad if he does know that his dad took care of his mom? It's just yucky all around, but it's very interesting to think about in terms of Shamrock's motivations, because I mean, we've just seen him as just cool and calculated at this point, but I mean, he's got to feel some type of way about his dad getting rid of his mom and being saved by the most wanted man in the world. So I'm curious to see what those motivations are like in the future. But moving forward, again, the Marines have announced that the Roger pirates have docked on the island. The Marines are instructed to get all the celestial dragons to the center of the island to protect them. And in doing so, we get the introduction of the we get the introduction of the Roger pirates. We see Roger with his saber, and we see Rayleigh and Scopper and all the crew. They're all just saying, hey, I'm going to go rescue Shacky. Listen, none of you have a shot with Shacky but me. So y'all need to stay back on the island and just worry about gathering the treasure, which I think is funny because like Rayleigh's looking over at Roger at this point and he's like, you think you're going to end up with Shacky still? And, you know, pun totally intended, but we know that Rayleigh is the one who shacks up with Shacky.
Wait, don't you think that Roger looks strikingly similar to Garp in this panel? Like he's got like a barrel chest, he's like huge and like his facial features look very similar to Garp as well, like very Garp-like.
You want to know what's even more Garp-like? If you look at this panel and you look to the left side of Roger's face, on his neck, he's got a scar that resembles the scar that
Yep,
Garp has
I
on his
was
neck
thinking that
too.
too. Yeah.
Oh my god. Is this actually Garp doing his Roger cosplay right now? We just
No.
never noticed it. So moving forward, we see a panel of some guy getting trampled by the Roger pirates as they're all trying to get Shacky and take her back. And we see Figurlin and he's like, man, I can't focus on the game right now because all these people are here and the celestial dragons are getting mad. They're like, this is my hunt. Protect us so we can hunt. And then we get a close up of the Gods Knights, and we actually get a couple Gods Knights that are actually introduced. So really quick, I think that we're just going to go over some of their character designs and the way that they look. But I just want to remind everybody that the Bavette family was also name dropped earlier in the chapter, so perhaps one of them could be a Bavette. Ed?
Yeah, so the one that I'm speculating to be the Bavette family is there's this woman who has this like sword that looks kind of like a lance, but it's a sword, and she's like thin, dark hair. She's wearing like, military like Black Parade, My Chemical Romance that Adam mentioned before. So she's wearing that sort of like military or parade like outfit. She's got a flower in her hair. Out of all of these, she's the one that I'm most thinking is the Bavette family. But yeah, sorry. That's the first one we'll talk about. You can continue, Adam.
Sure. Yeah, no problem. So I just wanted to say she really reminds me her character design of Okiku. She's got like the whole Okiku thing going on. And she does have like that elongated wedge, like lance shaped sword. She's looking pretty good. I'm digging the sash. She looks great. I'm curious to see what her interests are.
It's
But
funny that
judging
you
by the
say
hand,
that because I think she looks like Viola.
oh, I mean, I guess we all have a dark-haired beauty in our life we like to reminisce about, I
And they all
guess.
kind of look similar.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I think we figured out what Oda's type is. But so judging actually by the length of the hilt of her sword, we can only assume that it's like a two-handed sword. In doing so, I don't think it's really meant for stabbing, as it were, right? Unless she's got a horse somewhere. But I
Yeah.
think that this is more like a slashing weapon. But in moving forward, let's not get caught up with that. We also see a large woman in the back actually with a big cigar in their mouth and sunglasses. I think this person really has a similar character design to Rimu Shifu, so we can assume that this person might be Killingham. They're also adorned with what looks like cow or bull skulls, and it seems that they have a oh no, sorry. I got a little confused. It seems that Figurland is holding a scythe, actually.
No, no, no. There's a guy with a scythe with like the bullhorn helmet as well.
Oh, I totally thought that was just this person's character design. Okay, sorry. But let's go back to the tall, pointy teeth looking lady. So she looks like she could be Rimu Shifu, like a Killingham. She's also wearing like a large feather boa. She's got a big cigar in her mouth. I also think that the design is reminiscent of Dillinger. So I think it's interesting. I don't know if we could rule out that this person is like 100% human because the pointy teeth are giving off like fishman vibes. I guess in going in going forward, we also have this person with a cow skull over their head. They're completely in black. They have a long trench coat up. We see some black scruffy hair pointing out, but they also have a black fist gripping their scythe. I don't know if this is a glove or maybe they're just full body hockey, but everybody we've seen in the story that goes full body hockey immediately gets got. So I can only hope this guy gets got pretty soon. We also do see the man mayor lady. Their face is still covered. They have that world government hat on and that matchlock rifle in their hands. We don't see this person going forward, so I can only assume that this person gets got eventually.
Yeah, so actually in this panel, one person we don't see is Gunko. So earlier we did see that she had the title of Devoted Blade of God. So possibly maybe she's not a God's Knight yet. Like she's obviously a very, important figure in the world government, but I don't think she's a God's Knight yet.
So I think that the Gods Knights might have to have a representation from like a certain number of families. So I think if this man mayor person gets got, Gunko goes from being perhaps personal retainer of Emu to a member of the Gods Knights
Yeah.
just to bolster their
I don't
forces.
know about that because I think that Figurlin was and Shamrock were both in the God's Knight at the same time before Figurlin was raised to a Gorosei.
What I'm saying is I think you have to have representation of at least one from the family. So when Figurlin becomes a Goro, say Shamrock kind of takes his place, but they still have like the Figurlin representation in the Gods Knights as a whole. Does that make any sense?
That makes sense. I'm saying that I don't agree with that because I think that Figurlin and Shamrock were at the Gods part of the God's Knight at the exact same time.
Yeah, no, I'm agreeing with that. I'm saying you can have more, but you can't have less.
I
That's
see
the
what you're
point.
saying. Yeah. Okay.
So, in going forward, yeah, it's interesting. And then we also see Summers himself. He's looking pretty young. He's got the roses adorning his black parade vest. He's pointing his sword down and like resting his hands on it, and he's looking pretty solemn. I don't know. After seeing him kick that tree, I don't really like Summers too much, so I'm not really gonna linger on him too much. But the glaring giant in the room, I mean the elephant, I mean the giant in the room, is there's like an ancient giant behind them all with like this big burly beard and this big pointy teeth, and he's got these horns. His horns are white, but he's looking a little crazed. I don't know. It's very interesting. We know the Gods Knights are primarily human because they are celestial dragons. They are the purest of the pure blood. So what are they doing with an ancient giant in their ranks that seemingly knows that Emu exists and is a thing?
What if that person is Most that Loki communicates with because he's got a giant pearly beard?
Listen, if you want to take that tangent and go off on it, go for it. But I am not firmly convinced. Actually, it's weird because if you look at the design too, it almost looks like this person has like a corona around them. Like there's like light emanating off of them. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I see
I'm
that.
interested.
Hmm.
I'm interested to see exactly who this character is and how the world government came upon like ancient giants and like how they got them into their ranks if it was not for like the Galilei band. Because I would imagine if you have giants in like the highest ranks of the Gods Knights themselves, then you would have to have access to giants, right? Outside of Mother Caramel or any kind of like random experiments you can't get to work.
And we do know that they did have giants already as part of the military and world government. So I think that this person could be a giant. It also just could be a devil fruit that makes him very large. So there's a few ways someone can get that big, or it could be someone who is flipped or domi reversied and grew in size, something like that. So there's a few different ways.
I just want to push back a little bit. I think if they were Domi Reversied, we'd see like more black in their character design. I think their horns would be black. They'd look a little bit more demonic. But I mean, dude is smiling. He is happy to be here.
Yeah, I don't think that the black necessarily means that someone's jumping reverse feed. We've seen Loki and Harold with black horns, and they seem to be acting on their own accord. So I don't know if that's necessarily the case. All right, so we'll get back to the chapter. So the Marines are saying how it looks like the pirates are landing on every shore and starting to like kind of surround the island. Like as we know, Morgan's he reported that God Valiant's hunt was happening, so all the pirates are coming to save Shaki. And so they're saying like don't let them disembark, and it's too late, they already did. And the pirates are all charging against the island. So like they don't know what the pirates are after, but we see, Whitebeard and the other Rocks pirates just kind of like easily like slaying these marine fodder and just kind of slowly working their way to the center of the island. And then we see someone who has like a cannonball in their hand, and then they throw it, and he announces, "Don't chop my men up like a plate of veggies." And boom, there's like a big explosion from that cannonball, and a bunch of the pirates are like kind of flying away from that explosion. And we see Rox and Roger, and they're both looking and sweating. They're like, "Oh shit. Like, oh no, what's what's this about?" And it ends up being Garp. And yeah, like obviously Garp is kind of like smiling and laughing when he's like, "Here I am, baby." And the Marines that are on the island are like, "Oh my God, like we're saved. Garp is here. Like, hooray." Like he's definitely already a Marine hero by this point and has a strong reputation. And yeah, that's about it. So the chapter's over, but I want to kind of discuss a little bit about Garp's arrival. So one thing is that both Rox and Roger are unsettled. One thing about Rox is we did mention last week that he did have that fight with Harold, so he must have won. So he actually doesn't look that battered. So like I thought that it would have been like a really close battle, but it ends up being that maybe Harold just kind of like let him win or something like that because he looks like he's at full power, but they're still unsettled about Garp. Like he's not going to be an easy opponent. I think that Garp is probably around the same power level as Roger at this point, so maybe a little stronger, a little weaker. And I think that Rox is a little stronger than both of them right now. But Garp is pretty much in his prime. And another interesting thing is I don't think that Garp and Monkey D. Dragon have ever interacted in person in this series. Has that ever happened yet, Adam?
No, I think they did call each other on Den Den Mushi. Garp did talk to Dragon to let him know that he saw his son, and he heard that Dragon rescued Luffy when he was about to be executed. So they have communicated. However, there is one thing I wanted to point out too. If you see actually that introductory panel of Garp, right? Doesn't it look like he's got a marking over his right eye? I mean, it's more than just like a scar or something. It looks like he has a physical marking over his eye in that panel. And when they actually do the close up of his face, it's covered up by like kanji or something, so you can't actually get a good look at it.
Yeah, it's hard to see. It's hard to tell. But yeah, there is like a little bit of like boldness above his right eye or left eye, I guess. So yeah, like I'm interested to hear or see Garp and Dragon like talking to each other like in person, because like how will Garp react to Dragon's reportings of like what the celestial dragons are doing with these innocent people? Like obviously we know Garp is a good guy. So like this is gonna kind of be where Garp and Dragon kind of part ways in terms of their ideology, I think, by the end of the God Valley arc. Because we know that Dragon leaves the world government and Garp stays. So they're gonna have some sort of morality clash here. I'm not exactly sure what, but I'm thinking that whatever Garp wants to do, whatever his plan is, isn't enough in Dragon's mind. So Dragon's probably gonna split off and take those kids, Ivankov and Kuma and Jinny, and start the beginnings of the revolutionary army.
So it's very interesting. I don't know if Dragon is going to rescue them proper per se, because we know that he got the pawpaw fruit, and he was the one primarily who evacuated everybody. So he got the pawpaw fruit, and then he used the power to get people off the island, and then himself.
That's true. Yeah.
I think we'll see that Dragon, of course, is going to save them, and he might actually feed them the fruit. We know that Ivankov originally had the dragon fruit, so it's going to be interesting to see that struggle. But we know Kuma primarily got them off the island, but it's going to be interesting. I think Dragon's going to facilitate Kuma eating the fruit, and I think then he's going to turn his attention to trying to get the babies off the island. But to your point, I do think this is like the main falling out between Garp and Dragon.
Yeah. Yeah. I think so too.
Cool. Thanks, everybody. This has been chapter 1160 of One Piece, entitled The God Valley Incident. Thanks for sailing with us. That's it for this voyage of the Void Century podcast. Listen on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you sail for One Piece content. Catch our bite-sized theories and lore on TikTok and Instagram Reels. Until next time, whether you're seeking the poneglyphs or unraveling the history behind the Will of the D, listen to the voice of all things and we'll see you on our next voyage.